my name is Michael Bernstein. I'm co-founder of a new two-person sales and marketing consultancy called Reify. We work with companies just like the companies that you work for, B2B SaaS companies that market or sell products to technical people. So, and as part of that, we do a lot of working with our clients on content strategy specifically. And so I'm going to run through a brief presentation just to set some context to give you a sense for what we talk about with our clients when we give them advice about this subject, and also a little bit of an overview of what our panel of experts will be discussing. So that's me, looking a little less put together than I am right now. And so the name of this presentation is You Can't Spend Traffic. And that's intentionally provocative title, right? To bring home the fact that the reason why we market, the reason why we are here today is to sell more software. So in that regard, the most important thing that you can do is measure. So I'm going to try to convince you about that, right? We're going to run through a little bit of rationale behind why we measure, why measuring is so important, and then we're going to discuss specifically what we measure and how to measure it, and our panelists will fill that in with some real-world experience that they've had in doing these things at companies that you've heard of. So content marketing and your funnel. The big idea here is to keep in mind that for whichever stage of the funnel you're intending to impact, your content marketing, your marketing in general, needs to be single purpose and specific toward the end of impacting that funnel stage, right? So in general, the content as it flows from trying to bring traffic to your site, trying to generate leads, and trying to convert visitors into users and users into customers, as you go down the funnel, your content should be tuned to that specific level. And additionally, you'll notice that content gets more specific as you go down the funnel, less scalable as you go down the funnel, and more directed toward turning someone into a customer, eventually a loyal customer who will be with you for a long time. So as a little bit of context, just to kind of, so everyone can internalize the funnel together, this is the traditional sales funnel that you'll see when you Google sales funnel, which is pretty much what I did when I tried to come up with the content for this slide. It goes from awareness all the way to purchasing. One specific detail that I want you to notice here is on the left side, you see that, in the olden days, right, that marketing was really marketing was responsible for the top of the funnel only, and then it would transition over to sales. So if you were in a marketing organization, you would be responsible for getting people to be more aware of your brand and getting them to be interested in your brand, and then perhaps a more high-touch sales process would take over right away. These days, and this is something that as Reify we talk to our clients about all the time, these days, the idea is to use your content and your marketing as well as you can to reach as deep into that funnel as possible. So whereas before, sales would take over around converting someone who's interested into someone who's considering using your product, these days, that handoff happens much further down the funnel. So what should you measure, right? Hopefully I've convinced you that measuring is important, so what should you measure? So we've boiled that down to 4 metrics: return on investment, reach, engagement, and repeatability. I'm going to run through these really quickly. So ROI, why is it important? Why did I put it first? Because I want you to be focused on the money that you're going to be making as a result of these marketing efforts. So when I talk to clients about how to do their content marketing, how they should strategize, what type of content they should produce, I am always reminding them, yes, it's good if you get traffic, but it's better if you get customers. So a simple customer acquisition cost ratio formula here to give you an idea of how you can calculate that. Beyond that, we talk about traffic and reach. And it's, one of the things is looking beyond how many people you're able to get to your site through content marketing into who are the people? Who are they? Where are they coming from, right? So are you reaching enough people, and are you reaching the right segment of people? It's that intersection between those two things that is extremely important. And once you've gotten them to your site, you should be measuring engagement and behavior, right? So did the content that you produced, a blog post, a video, some sort of other anchor resource, a site that you made, a microsite, does it have a specific purpose to begin with? And then beyond that, once people are visiting it and engaging with it, are they actually doing that thing? So the graphic depiction here is just some simple goals that you can set up in Google Analytics to be able to measure these types of things. And then we have repeatability, right? So we have an overlap between things that are repeatable, meaning can you do that campaign again and get new results? And reproducible, meaning, if you do a new campaign, are you able to get the same results? And it's the overlap of repeatable and reproducible content marketing strategy that we want you to be able to focus on. So now I'm going to bring up our panelists. Let's just jump right into it. I think that the audience here is really interested in, everyone here knows who your companies are, right? Like I said, they've probably seen some of your work. So why don't we just start out with, how do you know when content marketing is working, right? What do you measure? Maybe give us a little bit of an overview of how you think about that, and then we'll jump into it from there. How about you start us off, Devang?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Michael. Thanks for you all, too, for joining us, and of course, for you all for spending time with us today. Very interesting question. How do you know that content marketing is working? I think if I were to take the most simplest version of this, if someone shares your content, I think it's meaningful. That alone on a first level is that you did something that was meaningful for at least the person who shared it. And then there are many other layers, and we'll dig into some of those a little bit later, but at least when we start there.
I like that. Yeah, so shareability. Okay. Meagen, how about you?
Yeah, so we are Salesforce House, and we use the campaigns module, and we tag every activity or program asset. So white paper, webinar, event, anything that we can tag digitally. And so every time someone downloads the white paper, if we know who they are, we would add them as a campaign member. Every time they fill out a form, we'd add them. Why that matters is we can tie that all the way to the sales opportunities, so we understand opportunities being influenced as well as those that actually are closed won. And then we do the ROI of it. We look at the cost to create it, the revenue that was impacted by it, minus the cost to create it over the cost. And then we stack rank every single asset. And we can see right away, like the architecture guide is the #1 most effective asset that hits almost every single deal. And so we start to learn from that. Okay, if we do a nurture program, let's add that content in there. Or if we're going to have a sales conversation, offer up that asset. And so we're really looking at impact to the sales cycle as the #1.
One of my favorite phrases that I've heard recently is when you're thinking about how to measure marketing, content marketing, or anything else, your metric should be something you can buy a beer with. So for us, it really focuses on how is that content impacting, influencing pipeline creation? How is it impacting and influencing revenue for the business? We've also started using a couple of tools recently that don't just show us how are we impacting pipeline and revenue, but also when you're thinking about how engaging is the content, if we put together a 10-page white paper and it looks like that is helping drive actual pipeline revenue for the business, we're starting to look at, are people reading the full white paper? Where is the engagement stopping off? So if we find out, even though this isn't a good piece of content, if they're only engaging with 2 pages of it, the next time we do it, maybe we need to either shorten it up, spend a little less time on that piece of content, or if they're dropping off at page 2, how do I make sure they engage in the whole piece of content, and can I get more money out of it?
I like the buy a beer with it thing. Did you ever try to walk into a bar and be like, hey, can I have a beer? My blog post got 10,000 views today. Has that ever, I have not tried that, surprisingly, but I don't think it would work that well.
If there was a city it would work in, it'd
Right.
be this one.
That's right.
I
You work at this bar.
I'll trade you a beer for 0.01% of your company. Yeah.
So
That might be good. Okay. All right. So that brings us to a little, so how do you measure it? How do you know that it's effective? Let's jump into, for each of you, what have been the most effective channels historically for your company, either where you are now or a good story from your past. Meagen, how about you?
I mean, our number one channel is our website. MongoDB has a lot of traffic to docs, and so we spend a lot of time without being intrusive, but offering up content that's educational that they might be willing to give us information on. I think things you should never gate are product briefs or docs, or if it's open source, downloads in that side of it. But if it's an analyst white paper, if it's something on a technical topic like microservices, I certainly think it's worth gating. And webinars, of course, you gate because they have to log in to see it anyway. As far as channels outside of the web, we find a lot of success on Facebook, retargeting folks that have gone to our docs to Facebook, and then they actually click through and fill out the asset we're retargeting them with. So
Cool.
I'm always surprised, and I don't know why, but Facebook in the last year or two has really worked.
Great. I think it's really interesting, just as a brief aside, for gating in general for content that you produce, just quickly to poll the audience, like how many people out there have ever produced a really fabulous piece of content and then spent almost as much time worrying about whether or not they should gate that content? I know that I have, right? I sometimes have a hard time knowing when that's the right thing to do. So this is a little bit off topic. We didn't talk about this in our prep, but Lauren, how about you? What do you think? Like, how do I know if I should gate it or not? Does it have to do with the size of my company? Like, what are some pointers there?
So it's funny. I am the person most people fight with because I err on the side of gate everything. No one gets anything for free. I care about the leads. I've become a more reasonable human. So if you start to think about it, in general rules of thumb for us are, what's the thing that are really more of an awareness? We just want people to know things like customer videos. Once each of you start to get more and more customers, or if you have tons of customers, customer stories are phenomenal assets. You want your customers selling for you. Do not gate them. Get them out into the world. Get the videos out into the world. Get your case studies out into the world. Then you do the other end of the spectrum, which is going to be a really heavy white paper, really deep content that costs you a lot of money and time to produce. That's not something you want to give away for free. So we start to build out a value curve of, is that going to add that much additional value? Start to put a form in front of it. You have something like an infographic. People don't want to fill out their contact information for an infographic. They're willing to fill out their contact information for a 10-page how-to guide that'll benefit their life. So those are litmus tests that we think through.
So it's interesting, right? So it has something to do with how much effort you put into it, how much money it costs you, except if it's this case study, customer success scenario. Do you guys feel have you experienced similar things?
I agree. I wouldn't gate your customers, get them out there advocating for you. I wouldn't gate any product information. I would gate the white papers that they might, value. You're teaching them something. If it's a video and they need to log in, not the customer videos though, run the customer videos, but if it's an educational video, I agree, infographics, don't gate those. Anything you think that will go viral, that's a quick read or a quick graphic, I wouldn't gate either.
So I have a totally polar opposite view, and I'm glad because we have separators.
That's why they're here.
When I joined Twilio, my mission was to kill the lead form. I felt like that was one thing that was blocking.
We have our first kill the lead form round of applause of the day.
I felt that technology should help us capture people's information without having to actually manually do it over and over again. So progressive profiling, good. Not gating, as much as not gating you can, good. Capture people through a newsletter if that's what is going to bring them back, right? And then, of course, if you have a software product that has a portal, you're certainly going to capture them there because that's the whole goal. You want them to come and become your customer. So for me, ideas are cheap, and if a white paper is an idea, let it out there. Let your ideas out there. Let people get to it. And if you believe your content is going to do the job, they'll come back to you. We ran a bit of test, and I want to share some of that data.
Please
if that's
do.
okay.
We love data.
So with my mission of killing the lead form, as much as I wanted to make a gut call on that, I wanted to make sure that I could stand up and support that with some data. We ran a test where we were able to see how much engagement, so how many views did we get between gated content and ungated content, and how much influence we were able to create on conversions. This test has been running for about 3 months now. We're seeing about 6x higher views with ungated content and about 3x higher conversion, influence conversion. At least from a short runway with a few assets, we're looking at possibly ungating a lot more. So that does mean investing a lot more with kind of the tools that you use in the back end to make sure that you know who's coming and reading this stuff. But I do want to kill the form.
Good. I like it. I mean, and that actually is a good transition into the next question that I wanted to ask, which was because I like how you said, the ungated content, 6 times as many people see it, ... and then 3 times as many people end up buying as a result of that. Did I interpret that
that's right,
appropriately?
yep.
Right. So I like how you mentioned both things, because that's kind of what we're driving at. And that brings us to the next question, which is, when have you worked really hard on an amazing piece of content just to get it out there, get as many people to see it as possible, and then realize later that it didn't fulfill your goals? Tell us a good, I failed when story, Lauren.
I have lots of I failed stories. It's half the fun of being a marketer.
We failed.
We
Right.
failed.
Right.
Actually, I've got an interesting story about making sure you're tracking the right metrics. So when you think about, if you were in the B2B space, you're starting to build an enterprise product, you're not going to convert online. That if you don't have the shopping cart, someone's not buying online, it's really making sure marketers think about the right metrics. And early in my career, I was working in a very different space, and we were looking at how we drive content to get a form complete. The form complete, and it was before there was as great Salesforce tracking as there is now. So we said, we just want someone to come in. We're going to measure our success on how many people are filling out forms. We're going to run all these PPC campaigns against this content to get people to fill out forms. So we generate leads, we pass them to the sales team. And I'll never forget it. We had 2 keywords. And keyword A is driving a bunch of leads for us at like $50 a lead. And it's great. And then keyword B, we're spending the same amount of money. It's driving leads for us at $200 a lead. And as a marketer, we're like, look, cool. My job is to get as many leads as possible. I'm going to kill keyword B. This one's getting me 4 times as many. And this was early days with Salesforce integration. So we integrate Salesforce with Google AdWords, and we come back, and it turns out that keyword A, great at generating leads, real crappy at generating money. So for the entire year, we spent about $500,000 on this keyword. Didn't generate a single dollar for us. And the keyword we were about to kill, because it's generating things for 4 times as much money, turned out to generate much more high quality leads. They were more expensive, they were higher quality, and it brought in about $3 million. So by looking at the wrong metric, and if you look at that early win metric, if you look at the form complete and not the actual metric you can buy a beer with, we literally would have cost the company millions of dollars in revenue every year, and we would have just been setting $500,000 a year in fire on advertising spend, which again leads marketers to be perceived as cost centers. You don't know anything about the business. So it really is, make sure you have the right metrics, otherwise you're probably going to be aligning to the wrong thing.
Try not to set too many piles of $500,000 on fire.
I mean, I think back going, gosh, if I would have known that, if I could have just gotten a cut of that, it's all right though.
Doesn't usually work out that way.
No.
Devang, I think you have a good story in that regard too, right?
And mine's slightly different one, which is having the right metrics. I think it's great, because that's where you see where the rubber's hitting the road. For me, my learning on this specific project was that you also need to go in with the right intent. And if your intent is off base, then oftentimes the results that you're expecting are not going to be what you intended for. So in this particular instance, it was, let's say, 3-4 years ago where we had an opportunity with Twilio partnering with Google and with a couple of other partners, Plantronics and LiveOps, and create a package that could be sold as a fully packaged SaaS contact center. Now, in theory, it sounded amazing. It was like great brands, the right kind of product that we all would feel that we want to buy and not have to invest into huge servers. So from its inception, the idea was great. And we built a full program around it where we had an event around it. We had content, website, interviews, customer stories. So we had all that put together in order to create the launch. And right after the launch, we realized how far we were from actually driving business with it. So it created a good amount of press. But at the end of the day, when you look at the contact center world, the applications that they use don't run on Google Books. They don't run in the cloud. A lot of these applications are on-premise applications. And if you're using a small notebook to run a contact center, you're probably going to not be able to do your job very effectively. So great idea, very poor result as far as business metrics go. And that's why figuring out that how do you not get drawn to some shiny object because you're taking a shower and that idea felt great, but after a while you're sitting having your coffee in the morning, think about it again and make sure you're gonna move the needle on your business.
Yeah, it sounds challenging to mitigate those types of problems sometimes, right? Like in that case, although maybe not. Maybe it would have been pushing a little bit further on that idea, or being a little bit more critical about it, or sometimes you're going to just swing and miss too, right?
True, absolutely. I think sometimes you just have to make those big bets. I think in this case, looking back, what we could have done better would have been to launch a smaller pilot, see what kind of traction we got, and then make all the investment into the website and the content and the customer stories, rather than drinking the Kool-Aid yourself and jumping into it with both feet.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think that's a pretty good strategy for people to think about, right? How can I have this idea, how can I take a small sort of not so scalable version of this, right? Run it all the way through and see how it works, and then kind of see those results and then base my next actions on that, right? Cool. So, Meagen, I have a question for you. For maybe a new product line, a new thing you're trying to put in front of people, right?
Yes.
How do you conceive of, if you're used to doing one thing, how do you
Yes.
switch that over for something else?
Yeah, so fair. So MongoDB Atlas was our database as a service, and it's a different go-to-market where most of MongoDB Enterprise is sold through a sales team, and then we have a corporate team that does inside sales, and this is really e-commerce where you could enter and then go up, and it's really the first time we'd sold something direct. We certainly sold or handed out open source through Reach, right? But actually selling where someone will buy a cloud offering on Amazon. And so it was really important that, one, we understood audience and messaging so we could balance, our budget. How do we align our budget around this? How do I divide up the resources to support a new product versus the sales team, and then making sure the timing was right. And we launched the product about 42 weeks ago, and we got really excited about, and this is more of a content fail, but we got really excited about this idea, this new product. There's some competitors in the market, and we clearly are the makers of the database. We should own this. Everyone's going to migrate off their existing offer. The price is, really low, so no one could touch it on the price. So we did this whole campaign and content around migrating in drones, and we gave this offer. If you migrated a certain size instance over, you would get a drone. All of this good work. Put it out there, bought all these digital ads, did landing pages, email marketing, you name it. But the challenge is we only offered instant migration about 2 weeks ago. So what you had to do is, in order to migrate, you actually had to write a bunch of code, or you had to work through professional services. You really could only use Atlas when we launched if you're initiating a brand new application. It wasn't as easy to migrate over. And so the timing was just off on that. It was an exciting, fun idea. We had 2 people take us up on it, but by the amount of resources I used and ads I spent, probably not the best timing on that. And had I understood deeper what it meant to spin something up and how you shifted from one product to the other, I would have waited. And so that's just me and the team communicating better with our engineering team, vetting what we're putting out there. I found I was at DocuSign prior for about 3.5 years. It's a very technical area and product. I just need to take that extra step and vet it with the engineering team or with the founder, and just make sure I'm really doing something that's worthwhile before I go spend money on it.
Very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
we have a little bit of time. Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Yep. We use several tools. So let's take an example. Let's take an example of a retargeting ad, because someone mentioned that's a good channel to work on. So if the funnel goes that I want to do new user acquisition that goes from a retargeting ad or a Facebook ad onto a landing page, and then from there into creation of a account or like a sign-up event that takes place, right? So if that's your funnel or that's your flow, we measure at all three places with that intent. So with Facebook, we're able to measure how many impressions and how much click-through did we have from that ad, and we can call it a success or not a success. Then we measure on the landing page based on the views, and then the conversion event would be, did someone end up signing up? And then within the sign up, we see, do they end up spending money? And this is over a cycle of a few different, at least a few weeks. And then we tie it together to say, as a whole, do we believe that these three things are tying together to create the net business value that we want or not? In terms of tooling, we use Google Analytics, Facebook data that Facebook gives us. We use Heap that shows us customer journey across our different web pages. Instead of just looking at conversion event on the landing page, we look at conversion event across the site. And each page, we look at the influence that each page has, rather than saying the conversion that took place on that page. And then within console, through a few different in-house tools we are built, how do we track the value of the business value of the event.
Yeah, I would add to that. We also use Visible to do a lot of tracking. We use Jump IDs. And then we also, as we come into Salesforce, we use Full Circle CRM to kind of understand first touch, middle touch, last touch before it became an opportunity. And we'll look at the influence, a couple different attribution models.
One of the things you'll notice is we're all talking about a lot of different tools throughout the different phases of the buying journey. So it's really tough to tie it all together if you're looking at everything individually. So one thing that we do, which is really, really helpful, is we actually pull everything into Redshift, put all of our data from all of the different tools into Redshift, connect it together without any PII, so that we know who somebody is, whether they're coming to our website and we're using Omniture, or we're pulling in Google search data, we're pulling in our Salesforce data for our offline conversion, for our deal acceleration. We'll put it all into Redshift, and we'll use Tableau as a visualization tool so that I can look at what is the performance of this ad all the way through from the click on the ad to what is the win rate, what's the close rate, how does this asset affect the commercial side of the business, the field side of the business. So that is just a good tip for you, is you're using disparate data sources. Can you put it in a database? Can you pull it back out with data visualization so that you're not kind of piecemealing it all together in Excel, which is where everyone starts, but it should not be the end game.
Start in Excel, don't finish in Excel.
Exactly.
Great. So we actually we have time for just one more question.
One of the things that we'll look at when you have a manageable number of accounts, like 100, if you're doing ABM to 2,000 accounts, it's a little trickier. But a lot of it is really what you can do in terms of personalization. You can still, persona-based is great when you're looking at scale, but if you're targeting 10 people, 10 companies, 100 companies, it's really easy to spend 5 minutes online, learn about somebody, learn a little bit about them. I heard this great story about how someone was running an ABM campaign, had a similar number of targets, and what they ended up doing was looking up where each of these people went to college, and said, all these companies, this is where they all went to college. For when I outreach to them, if I'm going to send them a direct mail piece, I'm going to send them like a Michigan baseball hat, and I'm going to do something that's really personal to them. The content's going to be tailored to them versus to their persona. And she had 100% callback on it, which was completely ridiculous. And then they did sort of a tier 2 for more of the influencers. So when there's more than 100 people, where it was more persona based, it wasn't like, here's your University of Michigan baseball hat, but it's still, I know you work in mid-level IT and I know this about you.
If you were going to tell someone, this is what you need to be implementing tomorrow to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success, what would that be? Devang.
Okay.
We're going to have each of you answer, so let's try to keep it brief.
Yes, I'll keep it quick. So I would say one quick thing that you can do is how easy, or do you have any content that is built around how to use your product? Because if you're marketing to developers, you don't want to waste their time taking them through a big journey of things. You want to show them how the product works, and you want to show them how to do specific thing. That's where they're going to be successful. We've invested a ton of resources in it. I would say if you had to do something tomorrow, go do an audit, sit with someone who is a developer, have them use your product, and then see where the gaps are. Wherever the gaps are, build something around it.
Yeah, put it to the test, right?
Yeah, I would say understand the persona you're targeting. Joining MongoDB, we were very good about developers, and we understood developer, but sales really needed to talk to IT ops, who was running the database in production. We didn't have a lot of content or focus on that persona, and we had to build it out. And so it was something we, in learning that really helped us bring in a lot more IT ops folks by building the right, understanding the persona, building the right content to draw them in.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm a big believer in that too, and as cheesy as it sounds to do things like, giving your persona a name and really thinking about them all the time, it's one of those techniques that actually seems to work for people to help them internalize like who they're speaking to. How about you, Lauren?
I was going to talk a little bit about messaging, but honestly, nail your website. Everything that you do is going to end up driving to your website. If you're putting out press releases, people go to your website. If you're doing lead nurturing, people end up on your website. Whatever you do, people will eventually end up at your website, whether it is looking for information, looking to buy, looking to engage. So I worked at a couple of different startups, and honestly, the website was almost the last thing that they put together. It was sort of run by engineering. It was really hard to update. It was something or founders put together sort of in their spare time. Don't take it for granted, and put time, put effort, and make sure it is a way that can scale really, really quickly, can grow quickly. You can personalize and update and change quickly. I thought it was an anomaly that I had worked at a company where the website was really difficult to make changes to, and I've learned that that's somehow not an anomaly. So just spend that extra time and focus. It'll pay dividends versus fixing later.
Yeah, thanks. That was great. Those answers dovetailed really nicely together. Maybe we didn't need the separators after all. All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.